All right. Well, so again, welcome everyone for the 2022 Mill and Overlay Improvement Project first neighborhood meeting. So on the agenda tonight, first we'll go over the project location, proposed improvements, a number of common construction concerns that folks typically have during these projects, how the project will be funded, the assessments that are anticipated, the schedule moving forward, how residents will receive notification and additional information. And then as Justin had mentioned, we'll open it up to questions. So the project location. So the mill and overlay improvements are going to include 31st Avenue and Croft Drive, just to the east of Rankin Road and west of Old Highway 8. In addition, we're also going to be doing 29th Avenue and St. Anthony Boulevard between Stinson Boulevard and Silver Lake Road. So the proposed improvements, so if you're not versed in what a mill and overlay is, so what they'll do is these first two machines that you see here, they'll go ahead and they'll mill off a portion of the roadway, typically anywhere from 1/2 inch to 2 inches of the roadway, leaving that base course, so that first lift pavement in place. The nice thing with a mill and overlay is once they go past with that milling machine, which is what you see in the picture, that pavement can actually still be driven on. So the downtime with folks being able to access the roadway is pretty minimal. Oh, what is happening? Oh, sorry about that here. There we go. All right, so then as far as proposed improvements, so also once they finish that milling operation, they can actually pave the asphalt almost immediately. So typically they won't do it the same day. There's usually anywhere from a few days to a week between when they get out there with the paving machine. But you can see how from existing pavement to proposed, they'll go ahead and fill in that low area with the pavement, and then they'll follow behind it with a roller. And usually within, gosh, half hour to an hour after they follow with that roller, the road can be driven on again. So prior to paving operations and milling operations, we will make sure everyone is notified that access to the roadway will be maintained, but there will be disruptions. So they should anticipate some delays. So a number of common questions during the construction process. So driveway access, folks will still have driveway access throughout the project. The only exception there will be when there's paving being done directly in front of your driveway. So as I had mentioned, they'll go past with that paver, and then before you can allow a vehicle on it, you do need to have what's called a roller on it, and that'll help compact that material so that you can drive on it just shortly after. Noise and dust is typically, a concern with a number of folks. Fortunately, with the mill and overlay operation, there's not a lot of dust, but it can get a little noisy out there, especially when they're reclaiming. So we do make sure that they stay within the city standards as far as noise control, but do anticipate that it's like any construction operation, there's going to be some nuisances. Working hours for the city of St. Anthony are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then 9 a.m. actually, or no, I'm sorry, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturdays. So we do allow them to do work on Saturdays. It helps us get as much construction work done in the summer as possible, so we can get in and out of your hair as quickly as possible. Mail and garbage service. So the mail is delivered by foot, so you should see no disruption there. As far as garbage service, if there is going to be construction work the day when you're planning on having your garbage picked up, the contractor will coordinate to make sure that there's a pickup location for the garbage haulers. Typically what you'll see is in our newsletter, we'll let you know when that will start. And what we'll do is we'll give you or let you know to use, whether it's duct tape or packing tape, you put your address on that piece of tape and then put that on your actual garbage receptacle. Typically, we ask then that you put that garbage receptacle out the night before, and the contractor will make sure to coordinate to make sure that. Special needs and events. If you know of anything that's coming up, we'd appreciate any heads up on that as soon as possible. If you've got a wedding or a family event that you have concerns about, if it's on a Saturday and wondering if the contractor is going to be working, certainly contact myself or Justin. You will also have the contact information for a construction inspector as well that you can coordinate with him just to make sure that we can do our best to accommodate what you might have going on. Sprinkler systems and visible fencing, you really shouldn't see much disruption to those items. However, on 29th and St. Anthony Boulevard, we will be replacing the pedestrian curb ramps out there. So if you do have any sort of fencing or sprinkler system in that area, we'd certainly appreciate if you can let us know whether you put one of those flags up or if you just send me an email. It's always best if the contractor knows that ahead of time so that they can plan to either cut those sprinkler systems back or coordinate with you on the invisible fencing ahead of time. Private utilities. So we do hold a number of private utility meetings with whether it be CenturyLink, CenterPoint, Xcel, and we provide them an opportunity that if they have any projects in the area to coordinate that work with our improvements, just for minimal disruption to folks. So that way we can try and get all of our improvements done at the same time. However, please note that, if CenturyLink or Xcel is doing some work out there, relocating their facilities, upgrading their facilities. It is a separate project. We just try and coordinate the schedules so that we can have minimal disruption. Turf restoration. So in areas where the turf does need to be disrupted, you will typically see the restoration in the form of seed. We've just found that really comes in nicely when it's connecting into your existing grass area, that you really don't see that seam like you would with sod, and the turf just comes, or the seed just comes in nice and lush as compared to sod, especially for folks who may not have an irrigation system. So it just ensures you get the turf back that you had prior. Project funding. So with mill and overlay projects, we do assess. We actually did amend our assessment policy on March 10th of 2020. Whereas we used to assess all of the properties on a front foot basis, now we actually only assess commercial, industrial, church properties on that front foot basis, and they are assessed at a 50% of the costs for that front foot basis. Now, properties that are on a unit basis, that is the biggest change from previous years. So residents are still assessed at 50% rate of those improvements, but instead of doing, what your front footage would be, you're either going to be a 1 unit if you're an interior lot or a half unit if you're a corner lot. Now, if you have a lot that, abuts maybe 3 different roadways, again, we try and separate that out. So potentially it's a third, and a third. So we try and maintain that everyone's getting that same benefit and assess folks appropriately. So with the mill and overlay improvements, so again, we're around that 50% assessment rate for the properties. You'll see it's not exactly comes out to 50% of those costs, depending on the improvements that are being taken place out there with the city fronting some of those sidewalk improvements. Typically, that's not thrown to the residents. We do follow the state statute 429 process. Which requires us to, hold these meetings, public hearings, assessment hearings. So if you do have an objection with your assessment, that objection does need to be received in writing and signed by the property owner prior to the assessment hearing. And that assessment hearing is typically held in that October-November timeline. The notice of appeal does need to be filed within 30 days after the adoption of the assessment. Which that is, I apologize. The hearing is actually going to be held in March, whereas the assessment adoption, that's that October-November. The interest rate on those assessments, if you choose to have that put onto your property taxes, that'll be set at the time the assessments are certified. So the properties that are proposed to be assessed are those highlighted in blue. So with mill and overlay projects, the assessments are paid over a 10-year period. Again, that interest rate is determined at the time of the bond sale. To pay off your assessment in full to avoid any interest accrual, that'll be by November 30th of 2022. So we're keeping everyone in the loop relatively early, just so that you can prepare for those improvements to be completed in 2022. And then any year after that, you can pay off the full amount by November 14th to avoid that interest accrual. Partial payments, the city does also accept partial payments to avoid the maximum interest that could be assessed. So that does need to be received by November 1st of each year. Now, if you don't want to pay off that assessment, or you don't want to make a partial payment, and you just like it to roll over to your property taxes, you actually don't have to do anything. That'll just automatically happen if we do not receive payment from you. And that interest rate for if it gets rolled over to your property taxes is going to be 2% over the true interest rate cost. In the past, that's been anywhere from 4 to 5%. The project schedule, so the council did authorize preparation of the feasibility report earlier this year. They accepted it here in August. So this is our first public informational meeting as we're starting the design process. In December, we anticipate the council to approve the plans and allow us to actually upload the plans for bidding from contractors. We'll open those bids and compute the assessments towards the end of January. We'll plan to have a second public informational meeting in February where we'll let folks know what those assessments roughly are going to be, so that you know that information ahead of time prior to the public hearing. So we like you to get as many questions out or concerns prior to the meeting, and also allows you an opportunity to talk to myself or Justin prior to construction. The public hearing and the award of the contract is anticipated for March, with the award of the sale of bonds to follow, and the construction for the mill and overlay portion will be started, in that early spring, early summer timeline, with final paving to be completed in the summer of 2022. Notifications, additional information. So if you would like to receive additional information or just weekly updates, you want to know what's happening with the project, we encourage you to sign up at the city's website. If you go to their website located on the screen there and then click the projects tab, you'll see a heading for the mill and overlay improvements. You can certainly sign up there and you'll actually receive these updates weekly. And they'll go directly to your email, so you don't have to check the website. But we do send out information as far as, what was done this week, what's anticipated for the upcoming week, and then some tips and tricks as well. And when I say that, I mean, if there's a detour planned because there's some work being done that will require the road to be closed, and we'll put that information on there as well, so you can plan whether it be your activities or trips to work, so you can plan that accordingly. With that being said, if you have any questions, both my contact information and Justin's is available. Certainly feel free to send us an email, give us a call if you have any concerns at your property or just have any additional questions.
All right, so we'll open it up for questions. Looks like we've got Rice and McPherson. Sorry for mispronouncing that.
Yeah, it's pronounced Reese. So what I was just trying to get a better understanding of is what to try to budget for. So if you're able to kind of give a range.
Yeah, so we prepared the feasibility study, and at that time, all the costs were estimated by the engineer, and those estimates were based off of historical construction prices. So we're looking at, based off the estimate, it was $2,900 a unit. And that would be spread over 10 years if you choose to put it on your assessment. Now, we'll open bids in December and we'll get actual construction numbers. And our experience has been that, our estimating is fairly on point with what we've seen historically. So it'll be around that $2,900 range is what we estimate, possibly lower.
Then my second question is, because I know then Rankin Road is, scheduled for full replacement right after that in 3 years' time. So I'm just trying to get a better understanding of what I'm actually going to be on the hook for.
Sure. So you must live on the corner and you're looking at, okay. Yeah. So with that full reconstruction, the assessment is actually only 35% of the construction costs. However, the construction costs are quite a bit more. Mm-hmm. So for instance, we had a street construction project near you earlier this year.
Right.
Those folks, it was on average around $10,000 a unit. And that assessment is spread over a 15-year period. So being that you're on the corner, you would only receive 50% of that. So you'd be looking at around $5,000 there, and generally around $1,500, $1,400 for the mill and overlay.
Okay. No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. Would you please clarify you said $2,900 per unit. Is that per year for 10 years? Or what is the total cost if you pay the assessment up front?
Right. So the total cost this is estimated $2,900. So $2,900 would be the total assessment cost. That's estimated. Of course, we'll have the actual number for you in January, February timeframe.
Okay, this is for, I live on 31st Avenue, so this would be for the mill and overlay?
That is correct. This is
Okay,
the
so
mill and overlay.
$2,900, that's the total cost per one unit, not $2,900 per year. Is that what you're saying?
Right. It's $2,900 total cost.
Total.
So if you chose to pay that up front, $2,900, that's what you would pay.
Okay,
Now,
all
if
right.
you chose to have it on your assessment or assessed to your property, that pays off much like a home loan, where your first year's payment is a little bit higher, and as we go towards that last year, that 10th year, it's lower. So you can just do the math. 2,900 by 10. You're probably looking at around $300 and some that first year, and those last years you'd be looking probably in the high 100s.
Okay, all right, thanks. Appreciate that. That clarifies it for me.
Any other questions?
Hi, I had a quick question. When you talk about restoration along the streets, my understanding was a mill overlay would just be, within the curbs. So what else are you planning to do along, say, in the easement along the front of each property?
Yeah, that's correct. So a mill and overlay is just strictly removing the pavement and putting the new pavement down. There are some areas where if we've got some severely damaged curb, we'd be replacing a chunk of curb. And so there would be a strip of grass behind the curb that we may need to reseed.
Oh, okay.
Also, there's on 29th and St. Anthony Boulevard, there's some sidewalk. If the sidewalk is severely cracked or it's heaved and we have a tripping hazard, we'll take care of that at that time as well. And then at the intersections where the crosswalk meet, we do the ADA improvements. So for people with wheelchairs, we just redo those pedestrian ramps, as they're called.
Oh,
so
sure.
we have the detectable warnings for the blind, make sure that it's flat for wheelchairs, and it just meets those ADA standards.
Right, right. How long ago was this done here?
So which street are we talking about?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
There's quite a few.
We're on the northeast corner of Croft and Rankin, and I know that early when we lived here, they redid the south end of Croft, but that's where I was curious, is that it wasn't down redoing all the pipes and such, but it went quite a bit into the yards.
Sure. Yeah. So I believe it's Croft Drive, and Jay Hartman is here. He was actually the public works director at the time. He may be able to add to that, but I believe it was 1998. Is that correct, Jay? So it's just over 30 years, 32 years old.
Well, that wouldn't be 32 because we've only lived here 27, and it's been since we were here.
Oh, okay.
98 would be.
Yeah. So and I didn't have a response from Jay, but what I recall was it was in the late 90s when Sky Cutter with Croft and 32nd were reconstructed.
Okay.
Jay, we can't hear you. You'll have to have Katie talk because you.
I can answer. We're muted out. It's been for the reconstruct.
Okay, I still didn't hear that, but
Yeah, he just mentioned it was in that same time frame. So
Okay.
he's in agreement with the dates.
yeah. And then as far as St. Anthony Boulevard goes, that was in the late 80s, I believe 89. So that pavement's quite a bit older. Any other questions?
Yeah, my name is Joanne. I would ask a question if I could. Nice presentation. Thank you. It's all very helpful. I'm at the corner of Croft and 31st, and I'm befuddled as to why a corner lot gets charged half and a interior lot gets charged full? Because we've got, you know, street on both sides of us.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So a homeowner is only charged for the work that's being done on the portion of street that they abut. So many of the residents in the interior, that's the only street that they abut. Well, the residents on the corner, we want to make sure we don't double charge them. So at the time of construction, you know, if we were to do work on, I'd say, both sides of the street, then they would be charged for one unit. However, in this scenario, they'll be charged just for that one side yard. When the other side yard is completed in the future, they'll be charged for that portion. So essentially, they will receive a one full unit as we go through the street reconstruction process.
So given that you're doing both streets that I'm on, I'll get charged one unit, right?
That's correct, yes. If you have a street on both sides, then you'll just be charged one whole unit at that time.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, I don't think we have any, I didn't see anybody raise hands, and we have no one else looking to ask questions. So if you do have questions, you think of questions, you have my contact information that was in the letter that was sent out. Otherwise, in Katie's presentation, she did have our contact information. This meeting is being recorded, so it will be available to be viewed online later as well. And you can get that information from us. Be more than happy to answer questions. You know, kind of throughout the process, we'd be more than happy to come out and meet with you on site and look at your yard if you have a specific concern or anything like that. But with that, I think we will close the meeting. If no one has last call for questions.
I think
Right,
Joanne
sorry, I
has
have
one last one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, one more. So, you know, the letter states that the construction will start late April or early May, but won't be completed until the summer. But it seems like it's a pretty quick thing all in all, right? I'm kind of confused why the long time frame.
Right, so generally in a project like this, we're looking for about a 1 week turnaround. We just don't know exactly when the contractor is going to start. Usually they like to start something like this late spring, and they would be complete, I guess, late spring at that time too. We would have some restoration items like seeding and things like that that will maintain, some cleanup items that may go on, you know, for an additional week or two. But yeah, it's generally a quick turnaround.
Thank you.
If we're replacing concrete curb or sidewalks, you know, we have to remove that panel, and it generally takes about 7 days for concrete to cure before we can actively get up to it and do that restoration. So there is a little period of time there as well. All right, any other questions? If none, we will close the meeting. We will have another meeting again, like Katie mentioned, in February, where we'll present much of the same information, but we'll have the actual construction cost to share with you at that time. So thank you everyone for attending, and have a good night.